Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our second day of ZinEX, Social Zinstancing, brought to you by Zinfandel advocates and producers. I am so excited to be joining you again. My name is Rebecca Robinson, and I am the Executive Director of ZAP. ZAP has traveled all over the world, and we have been so fortunate to make friends and to share our love of Zinfandel with everybody around the world and here in the United States and in California and New York and all over the place. And I know that a lot of you are visiting us today virtually from all over, so welcome. We have another great show in store for you. If you were part of our experience yesterday, you had a chance to see 5 amazing Meet the Makers sessions. And we have 5 new Meet the Makers sessions in store for you today. Before we get there, I want to take a moment to just thank some of the folks that made this event possible. I want to begin with the ZAP team, Leah, Glenda, Suzanne, so many folks. Robert Larson, who is doing our consulting on pushing this information out. And of course, Sam Kimball from New York Wine Events. Sam and I have been teaming up for over 5 years now to bring ZAP to New York. We love visiting the Big Apple and can't wait to be back. And Sam has visited us in San Francisco as well and took back some ideas. And so when he started thinking about virtual, we put our heads together and here we are. What do we have in store for you? So we have a chat feature that enables you to talk amongst yourselves with us. During the Meet the Maker sessions, we will try and answer your questions as much as possible. If we don't get to you, I strongly encourage you to go visit those virtual booths. The virtual booths are just below the main stage. If you scroll down, you'll see all those wonderful tiles with the names of the participating wineries. You click in there, and just like magic, a winemaker or winery host will appear, and you can talk with them directly. I mean, how often do you get a chance to talk with the winemakers one-on-one or in a small group? And even though we can't bring that to you in person, that's what this is all about today. The wineries have also put together some wonderful special offers. I know I've already been shopping a little bit, and I plan to do some more, but those offers are going to be available today and through February 15th. So if you don't get a chance to get your orders in today, you'll have a couple of weeks to take advantage of those special offers. So in addition to the folks that I've already thanked, I also want to recognize the wineries. The wineries are tremendous, and they are so giving and so wonderful to support this organization, to do what they do. They love Zinfandel, and they love sharing Zinfandel with you. And that's, again, I think what keeps me going to do this day after day is because there is such passion, and there is such incredible quality and such interesting stories. And the history of Zinfandel is alive. In fact, it goes back for ZAP to 1991. We are 30 years old this year, and so in 2022, we will be celebrating our 30th anniversary live and in person at ZinEX in San Francisco. But ZAP is also a member-based organization, and it's incredibly important to have our advocates, the A in ZAP, participate with us. If you're not a member, we would gladly have you join. It's fun. There's so much to offer. We have all kinds of different opportunities. Check us out. There's a link on Event Hub, or you can visit us at zinfandel.org. And Leah Delira, who is our membership manager, among other many talents, will be in our membership booth today, ready to visit with you and tell you all about ZAP as an organization. So again, so many people to thank, so many wonderful, wonderful people who make this organization thrive. But I also want to take time to recognize the sponsors who have been a part of this organization and who have made this possible. And so let's call up their names and recognize them and do a big shout out to all the wonderful sponsors who have made this possible. So as I mentioned, we are celebrating America's heritage grape, the history and heritage of Zinfandel. It is uniquely Californian. It wasn't from here originally, but it came here and it came to be beloved and recognized for its quality and its character. And so with that, what we want to begin to do is to shift over now and to talk about the many programs that ZAP has to tell that story. We have a great video that we'd like to share with you now that talks about the legendary Zinfandel Vineyards. And again, there are many more videos that you can see on zinfandel.org. Check it out. But for now, let's take a trip to wine country and see the legendary vineyards. Sam, take it away.
There's this phrase, maybe you've heard it, a legend was born. But if you've ever been able to stand neck deep in a California Zinfandel vineyard and seen the fruit produced by over 100 years of effort and struggle, you may have drawn another conclusion. There is no single moment when a legend becomes a legend. Real legends are built from year upon year of determination and grit. So real legends, they're not born. Real legends are grown.
Hello, everyone. Wasn't that a fantastic video? I love that. It inspires me every time I see it. Just absolutely wonderful to see wine country and to know that there is so much to see and absolutely so much to experience. And we're going to be taking you to a bit of wine country in just a moment. Randy Caparoso is going to lead us off with our first Meet the Maker session. Now, I want to let you know that the Meet the Maker sessions will be running throughout the day. So if you're interested in one and then you want to go and drop in on some virtual booths and talk with winemakers, come back out and there'll be something else going on. We also are taping all of these so that there's going to be an archive for future interest and to make sure that we capture all of these wonderful conversations. So for now, again, have a great afternoon. I will be popping in and out throughout the day, both to the virtual booths and to the live stream. So I'm going to, at this point, turn it over to Randy to kick off our first Meet the Maker session. Take it away, Randy.
Thank you, Becky. So I am, as Becky mentioned, Randy Caparoso. I'm editor-at-large for the Somm Journal and lifetime Zinfandel aficionado. Next year, I start collecting Social Security, so that's a long lifetime. And so I think I know and like my Zins. And today we're going to kick off with following our legendary vineyards theme of these winemaker webinars. And with this theme, what I've asked the winemakers to do is sort of relate what they grow in the vineyard to what you find in a glass of their Zinfandel. And so I'm going to taste the three Zinfandels of the three winemakers, and then turn it over to the winemaker and then have them talk about how it all connects. So today, the three wines that we are tasting will be from three contrasting regions. So it'll be a lot of fun in that way. I've always thought of Zinfandel as being one of the major grapes in the world. And like all the major grapes in the world. They're not so much varietally defined, but also defined by where it comes from. And so the first one we're going to kick right off is a lot of fun, and it comes from this winery called Berryessa Gap, and it's a 2018, and it's from Yolo County, and a lot of people aren't familiar with that. It's Yolo County is a sizable region, but this one is on the western edge of that county, around the charming little town of Winters, which I had the pleasure of visiting just a few weeks ago. Beautiful little town with a lot of charm. So I'll take a little whiff of the wine and taste it. Makes a really good breakfast wine, but it's very, very pretty. It's the first thing I think about it. It's beautiful delineated black cherry perfume. It's very well focused, a little bit of spice. And this is more of a restrained style. It's zesty, it's edgy with acidity, and it has a nice snappy, crisp finish. Delicious. So joining us to talk about this is Nicole Salengo, the winemaker with Berryessa Gap since 2013. So talk to me a little bit about the Cobo Ranch, where your grapes are coming from, Nicole.
Okay. Hi, Randy. Hi, everybody. Nicole Salengo here. Thanks for tasting the wine. And I'm glad you started off with this because it is a lighter rendition of many Zins that are out on the market. And I don't know if everyone knows where Winners is, so I'll just give you a little idea. We are really close to Lake Berryessa, 9 miles to the east. So we border Napa County to the east, and we're about 15 miles west of Davis. And Winters is historically known for being a farming region. We're at the edge of the Central Valley. So we have, your valley floor areas that are mainly planted currently to nut trees. Historically, there's been lots of different fruit-bearing trees planted there. And our vineyard, the vineyard that I get to work with, is a 60-acre plot that's in the foothills of the coastal range. So it's a beautiful site. I love working there and spending time there. It's, as I said, rolling hills. The aspect is mainly to the south, but what's important about this site is the fact that it's the only Zin vineyard around for many miles. And it's historically a ram ranch. So it was planted in 2000. I'm currently working with grapes that are 20 years old. So not old vine, but old enough where we're getting a really nice concentration of flavors. We have 2 Primitivo clones out there. So it's actually a selection of Zin, and the 2 selections are 05 and 03. And the root stock that it was planted on is 10114. We're pretty warm over here in Winters, being at the edge of the Central Valley. So we have real warm days and quite cool evenings. It's super dry. We get all of our rain from December to February, and our growing season because of that is pretty early. Our Primitivo or Zin comes off the vine in late August, believe it or not. It's our first red that we pick. And that's partially because of the warm climate, but also partially because I'm picking it early to try to make a more restrained style that's a lower alcohol. This Zin came in at 14.6, which I'm proud of. I'm trying to keep it under 15 personally. It's 100%, and that's intentional. It does make for a bit of a lighter color, but I'm trying to educate people on what Primitivo or Zinfandel from Yolo County tastes like. So that's a big reason I didn't blend anything in. But yeah, the Coble Ranch is owned by my bosses, the Martinez family. They are 4th generation farmers. And the reason that they planted the vineyard was an extension of their rootstock business. So the rootstock business was started in the 60s, and they really know their plant material. So this is the vineyard I am working with today as a result of that. I can talk all day about this, but Wineries is known for its microclimate. So my house is in Wineries. I'm talking to you from Wineries right now. The vineyard's actually a mile north of here, and we get such high winds up at the vineyard that I don't get at my house. It's pretty cool and unusual. So, you know, those over 100-degree days during the growing season are cooled off very significantly in the evening by those winds that are flowing through the Berryessa Gap to the west. So another really cool thing about this area are the geological and soil features. We mainly clay that I'm working with in the vineyard, but there's also a lot of alluvial deposits. We have all sorts we have volcanic rocks, igneous rocks here, metamorphic from mountain building, from the coastal range, the back of mountains. Also sedimentary because we're basically in an ancient ocean. So our Primitivo block has clay base, but there's a lot of large boulders in it. And I think you get an earthiness in our wine from that clay, but there's a savory minerality and a textural experience that you get from the alluvial deposits and those boulders. Yeah, the clay also helps keep the soil moist, so we're not irrigating too much in the dry climate. And this particular block is set up on a VSP trellis system, and it produces 4 or 5 tons to the acre, really loose clusters actually, and some uneven ripening, which I actually like. We pick the whole block, which is about 8 acres, in 3 different picks, and that is separated by clonal selection as well as soil differential, different soils. And so I have 3 lots of Zin that I pick every year. One is less ripe and one's more ripe, and we do wind up blending them all in the end. And we make about 750 to 850 cases a year. Our total production, gosh, I make everything from the vineyard, and we're actually planting more. So when I started in 2013, we're doing 4,000 cases, and we've really expanded. And the goal soon will be about 10,000 cases. But we're still boutique, and we focus on Mediterranean varieties. So I'm not making Cab or Merlot. We're doing California varieties like Zin, Petite Syrah de Rive, Tempranillo, and the like.
Terrific. And so I congratulate you and the Martinez family on this extremely unique Zinfandel. For those of you not familiar with Berryessa Gap, I strongly urge you to look into it. It is different. Someone did ask a question about temperatures. As far as I know, this is classic Mediterranean region, so it does get warm in a day in the middle of the summer into the 90s, and then it cools off at night, into the upper 50s, if that's correct. But I think a big factor is that wind. You're so close to that gap. It definitely, has adds that little stress layer to the development of grapes. If I'm okay with saying that for you, Nicole?
Yes, absolutely, Randy.
All right. You're my best friend. Thank you for
Thanks
making
for coming to visit too. That was fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So we're going to go with our second wine. And this one is from a winery called Lapis Luna. This representation, even though it carries a North Coast appellation on the label, is from Mendocino. which is that classic area, particularly the inland Mendocino area around Ukiah Valley, which is where all the old Italians went to in 1800s to plant their Zinfandel and their Charbono and their Barbera and their Carignan. This is sort of a dream area for red wine varieties with their, with that gravelly clay type soils. So in that sense, it's going to be similar to the Berryessa Gap in the Winners. Well, it's not an AVA, but soon to be Winners Highlands AVA. Sort of soil wise similar with the clay content, but it has that classic Mediterranean dry, warm summer, which Zinfandel grapes loves. So when I'm getting into the nose of the Lapis Luna, I immediately notice that this is a different style of Zinfandel. It is very aromatic. It has a deep color, and the nose is more of a deep black cherry veering towards plum and blackberry. Again, I think there's a variation of the soil. You get more phenolics and you get more phenolics like anthocyanins and color in this type of Zinfandel, and this one has it. On the palate, though, this wine is surprisingly round. The tannins are soft. It's very inviting. It's very lush. It's a wine you just want to loll around in the mouth. And it isn't a pure Zinfandel, by the way. It's 20% Sangiovese, evidently. And to talk more about it, we have the partner and co-owner of Lapis Luna, Andrew Nelson. Hello, Andrew. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Randy. Hey, Nicole and Michael, Sam and Rebecca. It's good to see everybody. And I can't see anybody else, but they can see us, Randy. Is that right?
We can see you.
Okay.
I'm sorry to say we can see you well.
Okay. Fair enough. So should I kick it off? Should I get into this one?
Yes.
We're Lapis Luna. We're trying to inspire people to reach for the moon. First with our labels, which are 400-year-old copper plate engravings. Each shows a faceless hero reaching for the moon. And then with the wine inside, we make 7 wines. 6 of them, well, 5 are predominantly from a single vineyard just north of the town of Ukiah. This is the Polly Ranch in Mendocino County, and pretty gravelly soils, also pretty windy, cooler site. And so particularly on the Zin, I get like that really nice floral, purple flowers, lilac, lavender, really nice, cool climate Zin. Just a little of that like white pepper, the rotundone comes through. And thank you for calling out the Sangiovese. Yes, we do. We love Sangiovese, and we blend as much as we can into most of the wines. There is 20% Sangiovese in here. And I think it gives it this real savory characteristic, kind of that umami, and a little bit more that mid palate. So I'm tasting the 19. I think you have the 2019 vintage as well. We started blending Sangiovese in 2017 and haven't looked back. As far as the artwork, we think a lot about the label. We're really trying to evoke emotion and inspiration. They all come from a book from the early 1600s called Pious Desires. I've got the whole lineup here. If I flip my camera around, there you go. There's our set. And this book was super popular in the early 1600s. The artist's name is Herman Hugo. He actually died of the plague. And so I think that this artwork was particularly relevant 400 years ago during a pandemic, and then again today, quite relevant as well. We put a kind of a call to action on the back of every label that kind of even more inspiration. Look beyond the dangers of the forest be brave. So some liquid courage here. This is actually hemlock. When you burn hemlock, you'll hallucinate. This is the coolest label of all of ours. So our hero is hallucinating and seeing a skeleton holding a feather and a sword off in the background. As you drink more, you'll feel even more inspiration. There's a question about Mendocino terroir versus Sonoma and Napa. Sure. Oh yeah, that's a good question. You know, Mendocino is quite a bit cooler, and you know, not to generalize all of Sonoma, but this vineyard gets quite cold. So the brighter acidity, and we can struggle to get everything ripe. We'll battle with pyrazines. So really, from a picking standpoint, we're picking this more on the skin flavor than on the sugar accumulation. Once the pyrazines, once that the green characteristic has left the skins, then we're trying to pick this really as early as possible. The wind, I think that the wind really creates just a little bit thicker skin, particularly off of this site. So, you know, a thicker skin, we can get some more aggressive tannin if we're not careful. So we're pulling this off of the skins as soon as possible. And, you know, lighter in color, it's lighter. So I'd say cooler certainly than Napa, and even more so than Sonoma. And then just the price of land is so much cheaper in Mendocino. So I think we can deliver some really good value beyond Napa and Sonoma, strictly because of the land prices. This retails for about $12 or $13, and I'd put it up against any $20 bottle of wine. So we're really trying to over deliver on the value.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah.
We're going to be moving on. It does have that rich dark color, so it's a fabulous wine. Well, we
Thanks, guys.
are going to a different area now. We're going to go all the way to Lodi, and we are going to examine Lot 13 Vineyard by Mckay Cellars. He's on the east side of Lodi. The wine itself is typical Lodi and is extremely fragrant. You know, in this wine, the cherry fruit just leaps out of the glass. It's very effusive. It's very soft and silky and very feminine, if you will. The little organic qualities, because Michael's also Mr. Native Yeast and all that kind of nice stuff. And he's growing in almost pure sand. So Michael Mckay, the owner, winemaker, and grower of Mckay Cellars, take it away, Mike.
Hey, Randy, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Nice to see you. Happy Sunday. First, you brought up a great point in your intro. You started talking about Zinfandel and varietal characteristics when it comes to Zin. And that's what I love. When you look at Nicole's wine, you look at Andrew's wine, you know, sense of place, terroir is a huge factor in Zinfandel. I always think of Zin as being almost a blank canvas. And by that, I mean, you can push it in so many different directions. You know, it's really 180. You can make it big, bold, knock yourself in the face, down to elegant and soft and perfume. And you said feminine and red racy and everywhere in between. And that's what I love about Zin. And so we've got 6 different Zinfandels that we produce that are all vineyard designated. They're 100% Zinfandel. They're all from that specific vineyard. And it's fun. What Nicole and Andrew were saying, we share a lot of the same characteristics now. We like to multi-picks in the vineyard. When you think of Lodi, you look at Lodi and you think of, you know, it's hot and flat and that's all we've got. And that's not the case. There's a different microclimates that move through Lodi that go from the east side to the west side. West side predominantly is a bigger, more robust Zinfandel. When you go to the east, you cross over 99, you tend to get much more of the softer perfume, red cherry characteristics. And, you know, and that's, we have the 6 different vineyards I mentioned are all across the Lodi sub-AVA and the McCollum River. And this particular vineyard, this site, I was able to acquire the land back in 2011. It is planted around 1915, maybe a little bit earlier. It's own rooted. As Randy mentioned, we had 3 inches of rain 4 days ago, and I could drive a tractor in that vineyard right now if we wanted to, if we had to. It really is sandy and multi-layered. I was lucky enough a few years ago. I have a buddies in the construction company, and we got a big backhoe, and we dug down, took one of the old vines that actually hangs in our tasting room, dug down about 25 feet through that sandy soil, and looked at this root to see, and in my theory, it would be this big tap root going down 20, 30, 40, 50 feet. And we got down to about 20, probably close to 25 feet. And there was a knuckle in this root, and it was one tap root from the vine that's over 100 years old, just going straight down through that sandy looking for water. And I truly believe when you look at old vine and you think about that root system, how it goes down into the different layers of the sand, whatever the stratosphere it's moving through will help bring up water, which we actually watered once this last year in 2020. 2019, we did not water at all. It really is tapped into its own water supply, and all that stratosphere below it, being with a stone's throw of McCollum River, the water tables are not deep. They're certainly somewhere close to these vines in this vineyard. Alcohol here is 13.8 on this wine. It's funny. The first year I farmed it, being over 100 years old, wanted to produce over 5 ton an acre. We worked on that. We bring it down. Right now, it's typically between 2.5 and 3 ton per acre. And I love the sense of place. And we talk about terroir. We talk about characteristic site. This particular site in the McCollum sub-AVA of Lodi is a special spot, in my opinion, because you've got all these old vines, really one of the largest concentrations in Lodi, and I'll argue maybe one of the largest concentrations in California of old vines in a specific area in a specific microclimate. So it's something I've fallen in love with, the area. I've been very happy to be the steward since 2011 of the ground. And like I said, a lot of pride, love Zin. And I think I said it Thursday night when we were having a winemaker's toast with Zap. But if you're serious about Zin, you got to be part of Zap, and that's why we're all here. To support Zap and look at these great wines. Nicole and Andrew.
Thank you, Mike. Great. Thank you, Mike. We have like 2 minutes. Does anyone have a question for any speaker? If not, you're going to have to listen to my lovely voice for a minute. Okay, great. Okay, there was a question about where to buy all these wines, and they're all available online. And Berryessa Gap does have a terrific tasting room in Winters. So and Mckay has a tasting room in the city of Lodi, right next to the old railroad depot where the city of Lodi was founded. And so this was a fun exercise. We got 3 different Zinfandels. They all taste like where they come from. I think that's the most important part. They aren't trying to taste like something from Sonoma or Napa or Paso Robles or Amador. They're trying as best these vintners can do it. Taste like where they're from, beginning with the Berryessa and that unique gravelly hillside in Yolo, down to Lapis Luna in hippy dippy land in Mendocino, and Mckay in that old region of Lodi with that history of Zinfandel going back to the 1850s and 1860s. So I want to thank everyone for joining us, and thanks to my 3 guest winemakers, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of your winemaker chats today. And happy Zinfandel.
Thank you, Randy.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks,
Bye, Nicole.
Randy.
Bye, Andrew.
Bye, great to see you
Bye,
guys.
guys. Reach for the moon.
Great session, Randy. Thank you so much, and thank you.
Good job, you guys.
Really
Thank
good
you.
stuff. Make sure everybody watching, make sure we're going to go to break momentarily. Make sure to go to virtual booths throughout the festival, see the special offers, hear the stories, learn more about America's heritage grape. And we will be right back with a very interesting next Meet the Maker session on Sonoma County. We'll be right back.
My name is Andrew Botine, Senior Vice President of Tricor Brown Winepack. As North America's largest wine bottle distributor, Tricor Brown Winepack simplifies the packaging procurement process so you can focus on winemaking. Even in uncertain times, we are dedicated to providing access to the highest quality packaging and reliable customer service. We remain open for orders with uninterrupted warehousing and repacking capabilities. Especially now, it's important to choose a packaging partner with exceptional resources and global reach. Tricor Brown Winepack is here to help.
Welcome back, everybody. We are excited about this next Meet the Maker session. I'm Sam Kimball from New York Wine Events. We're thrilled to be co-hosting the event today and this weekend with Zap. And we're about to jump into a really interesting conversation with 4 different winemakers and wineries from Sonoma County. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that New York Wine Events has had the privilege of having done over 6 live broadcasts in the last year with Sonoma County producers. And it's been an education in all the AVAs in the county and the incredible wines being produced. Today, we're going to hear directly from winemakers about 4 specific wines from 2 of those AVAs, the Dry Creek Valley and Russian River Valley. And I'm going to hand it off to Rebecca Robinson, who's with us, and she is obviously an expert in all things Sonoma County. And we'll jump into having the winemakers chat about these wines. Rebecca.
Well, thank you, Sam. I don't know if I'm an expert, but I certainly love drinking Zinfandel and especially learning more about Sonoma County's AVAs. And having graduated from Sonoma State, I definitely have a soft spot for Sonoma County. So we're going to kick it off with Aaron Potier, and we're going to talk about a couple of different appellations with Aaron that relate to Sonoma County and how to blend those together for a magical bottle. So Aaron, tell us about this wine. Tell us what makes it so special.
Perfect. So we are making, and I am going to be discussing, our 2017 Bear Flag Sonoma County Zinfandel. As you mentioned, we have decided to appellate this county and not a specific valley. We get fruit from both the Dry Creek Valley and Sonoma Valley. So I'll be talking a little bit about those two. We have a site very well known for Pinot Noir in the Russian River that has a unique Zin vineyard at its highest point on a little plateau, but I'll save Russian River for the others and some of the other unique valleys in Sonoma County. But for us, we are leveraging Dry Creek and Sonoma Valley. Myself being born and raised in Sonoma, I definitely have a soft spot for Sonoma in my heart. And this, our Bear Flag is a tribute to the 1846 raising of the Bear Flag in the town of Sonoma. So a little local tribute. And our vineyard that we have that's pretty prominent in Sonoma Valley overlooks the valley and an amazing, amazing site. So what I'm going to break down are 2 places. And I think I'll chat a tiny bit about Zin and some of the challenges, and maybe I can take that off the plate of the others when we get into specific terroirs. But Zin can be a bugger to grow. It's pretty dynamic. It grows well in cool climates, hot climates. The seminar before us had a wonderful explanation of Lodi, where it's actually quite hot. And then as we head out to the Russian River, it's quite cool. So Zin's big nemesis in my mind as a winemaker is heat, especially excessive heat. With the thin skins and the multitude of types of berries on a singular cluster, it kind of wants to deceive us as we go through the ripening season. So we're looking for sites and terroir and climate, all the things mixed together so that those big firm berries that are more of our red fruit and acid can play well with our medium-sized berries, which upon ripeness might start to shrivel a little, get into that blue fruit and darker fruit spectrum. And then of course there's those little tiny guys, and they're so small, so soft-skinned, they tend to wrinkle up pretty darn quick. Those desiccated berries would definitely start to push us early in the season, even towards that sort of porty, almost raisiny style. So Zin, we're always on the watch for what a cluster looks like. Its lack of uniformity gives us a little bit of guesswork to make sure that we have the best of the red fruit, the blue fruit, the dark fruit, and not, in our mind, trend too far toward the overripe. That's when I think you can throw all sense of uniqueness, site, individuality, personality of a site. You can throw that right out the window if it turns into, a little desiccated raisin balm, and all of a sudden you just have high alcohol wines with lack of signature. Yeah.
Well, exactly. And you raised a really good point about alcohol, and talk a little bit about the importance of balance in winemaking, and how that plays into it, because that really is such a key factor.
So the alcohol, of course, Zin has been known in very warm, even in warm harvests or even medium to warm harvest, your average harvest, still there's always a risk of getting really high sugar accumulation. And then as you ferment, it keeps soaking up and giving and giving and giving. So sometimes it can be a little surprised at how high some alcohols can get. But I think with this group here, and I'm lucky enough to be with this group of winemakers, you're going to hear a lot about fruit. And if I'm in the Dry Creek Valley and Russian River Valley, I'm talking fruit. So I think in warmer areas, you tend to talk power, and then you can bring some other heavy hitters to the party. You can bring some big oak, you can bring some big blenders. For us, if you're in the Dry Creek Valley, Sonoma Valley, Russian River Valley, our principal focus is fruit. So for us, we're trying to capture that. And then the one different thing that I'd like to think I'm bringing to the party, even though Sam mentioned only Russian River and Dry Creek, uninvited, but I'm bringing Sonoma Valley along with us. Our vineyard there is Monte Rosso. It sits 1,200 feet above the valley floor, this wonderful red soil. And I'm gonna bring texture to the party. So with our Bear Flag Zin, we are principally about fruit, very light-handed when it comes to oak. We just want layers of sweetness, some nuances of sweetness. And with alcohol, I'm gonna say we're moderate. Our bottlings have gone between about 14.4 and 15 on the nose. And to us, that still showcases fruit, gives mouthfeel and body, and doesn't overwhelm or provide a burn on the finish or any excessive heat. That's absolutely our goal. But with Monte Rosso, we are lucky enough to work with vines that are 135 years old. So 1886, the first plantings, we still have 2 blocks of Zin left and a block of Semillon. And those vines are so balanced. It's such a beautiful site. And they bring the most amazing texture, and they maintain their acidity as well. So some of the beautiful things that I'm going to sort of segue into about Dry Creek, diurnal shifts, really warm days, cool nights, and also out to the Russian River Valley where it's a little cooler. We're talking retention of acidity and retention of fruit flavor. Monte Rosso not only gives us both those, but at that elevation, that rugged climate, and that rugged terroir, we also get nice tannin and texture. So that's definitely a signature of our Bear Flag.
Absolutely. And that's such a great segue, talking about legendary vineyards. And I want to bring in Katie Madigan, who, of course, is a great winemaker for St. Francis Winery. And Katie, your winery is in Sonoma Valley, but you're going to be telling us about a fantastic Russian River Zinfandel. And so talk about a little bit of the differences and play off what Erin was talking about and how that relates to your wine.
Absolutely. I think that Erin kind of hit it on the head that every part of Sonoma County, especially with Zinfandel, really brings something unique and different. And maybe you see that more in the Russian River Valley because it is cooler the farther west you go into Russian River. And a lot of people don't know how big Russian River is. It is on both sides of Highway 101 that goes north and south in California. So you have the eastern side, which can be much warmer and produce a completely different wine profile. And then as you move west towards the coast, you start to get those vineyards where the fog will stay a little bit longer. In a cooler vintage, it may hang out half the day at least. In a warmer vintage, we're talking even at least until mid-morning. So you get a longer growing season the more west that you go. And you really need to pay attention to the fruit that's being grown and when your idea of ripeness has been achieved. It's not just about sugar anymore. It's not just about pH and TA. It's this multitude and this combination of factors.
So tell us about the wine that you're featuring specifically, and yeah, show us the bottle and show us what you're up to.
So today I have the St. Francis 2017 Jovenetti Vineyard, and it's one of my absolute favorite wines to make, and it's one of my absolute favorite vineyards to visit. I probably visited a little bit more than I need to, but we're talking over 100 years old. It was planted by the Jovenetti family, and they still farm it today. And what I love about this vineyard is, even though the majority is Zinfandel, it's traditional in that there's a lot of other varieties kind of interplanted sporadically in there. And I think once we mapped it vine by vine, we came out to see that there's almost 24 different varieties interplanted with Zinfandel in there. And that's what brings this unique character to this wine.
Well, and Katie, of course, Russian River has gotten, a lot of attention over the last decade for being a Pinot Noir producing region, but really Zinfandel has been such a classic in Russian River Valley. Talk a little bit about that history and the importance of Zinfandel to Russian River Valley.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff going on right now about Russian River Zinfandel in particular, and the soil that comes out of Russian River and how it is unique in what it gives to all grape varieties. But I think we see it a lot in both Pinot Noir and Zinfandel the most. I know that for Zinfandel, I see definitely more acidity, which I like. But also there's these bright red fruit components. Even in a really warm year, you don't really transcend into the black and blue fruits over there. You mainly stay in the, strawberry, raspberry, maybe even some pomegranate in some warmer years. And it brings a freshness that you don't see in a lot of other appellations in Sonoma County.
Great. I'm going to come back to both you and Aaron on the question of what to pair with these great wines. So get ready for that. But we've talked a little bit about Sonoma Valley, and of course it's a great Monte Rosa vineyard, and also Dry Creek. And let's do a deeper dive into Dry Creek with Miro and Ryan. Miro, let's kick things off with you talking about your Dry Creek wine. Nice to see you, Miro.
Nice to see you too. God, I feel like I'm surrounded by giants so far as wine quantities. I'm probably the smallest one in this group. A little bit. I'm sort of a nomad as far as exploring vineyards all over Sonoma County. I made wine from just about every sub-appellation, Zinfandel especially from Sonoma County, including Lake County and Mendocino. So, but I basically grew up, I should say, as a winemaker in Dry Creek Valley, and I still have a very soft spot. I worked with Dry Creek Vineyards for about 9 years. And sometimes I go back to the same vineyards, and this is the case with the Walcott Bevel. And this is the bottle that we're going to be talking about. It's 2019. Sorry, I'm depleted from previous vintages. I don't make very much. This is freshly bottled, actually. About 200 cases of it. So Walcott Bevel, Walcott Ranch, it was started in 1959. Then Dove Bevel leased it back in 2001, I believe. There were some old vines on the property, and they were getting sick, and Dove replanted all with new rootstocks and with the Mazzoni clone, Zinfandel. And so the vineyard is sustainable. It's in one of those, I call it the prettiest. I also like the red dirt you're talking about, Aaron. This one is the other one, is the Manzanita, kind of a yellowish, very well drained. It's an old soil, it's deep. It does bring some minerality, but it does make some very structured Zinfandel. There's some tannin there, but there's also a very good color. The vineyard faces both east and west. It depends where on the slope it is. It's a very gentle slope, about 3%. Let's see. Aromatics, Dry Creek. Dry Creek is always very, I would say very typical. I mean, it does have the dark cherries. There's cranberries in there, strawberries, nuances of that, and then minerality. I'm not sure if compared to Russian River. I absolutely agree with the comments I made. Zinfandel, I still do, from Russian River. They're on the brighter side on the spectrum, where Dry Creek it's just very solid. Let's see. I mean, later I'll talk about Trento Dew and Alexander Valley. It's a whole different animal. The fruit there, it gets even deeper, but Dry Creek seems to be on the brighter side, but yet dark fruit, red.
Well, and this has been the conversation, Mira, that we've been having, at ZAP over the last year is, this great abundance of, single vineyard wines. Now, again, Bear Flag has that broader, picture of Sonoma County. The rest of you guys are featuring this single vineyard. And of course, it's, I think, really important to talk about the legendary aspect to that, the history, the fact that you guys are preserving these wonderful vines that have been in the ground for so long. So you talked a little bit about the history. How far back does this vineyard go?
It was purchased in 1959 by the Walker family, but it was already planted. So there was some old vines on the property, old Zinfandels, and there was some other mixed blacks on it. For some reason, the ranch might have been abandoned for some time because they needed. So they kept the old vines until basically 1997, and then they got replanted. So Masonic clone, I'm not sure if they had some of that before, if Duff Bevel sourced from the old vines and then replanted the vineyard. But it does have that connection with the old clones.
And now it's being lovingly cared for and put into the bottle by you, and that is such a great thing. So I want to take the conversation to Ryan for just a minute or two and talk about kind of the next level of what's going on with these vineyards. Ryan, you guys not only have an estate, you not only have a single vineyard, but you are doing it all estate. And tell us what that means and what makes the bottle that you're featuring so special.
Yeah, so we're featuring our 2018 Lilly Hill estate today, and that is our estate vineyard here. We're on the northern part of Dry Creek Valley, up kind of by Lake Sonoma. And having an estate site is just the next level of control. We're fortunate enough to work with a lot of different vineyards, a lot of different growers. And the fruit that comes from those places is so unique and so interesting, and you really start to learn what each site offers and what you can do with that in the cellar to really optimize that fruit into stellar wine. But at your own estate, you really have control, and you can start to build that wine in the vineyard, working hand in hand with our vineyard crews. And one of the things that makes Lilly Hill so unique for us is finding that right site and having a great block of fruit can make an amazing wine. But here we've got 11 different blocks of Zinfandel up there. Vineyard ranges about 500 or 600 feet in elevation. We have east-facing exposures. We have west-facing exposures. We have 5 other varietals planted up there. And so you really begin to have this broad palette of flavors and aromatics to build on. And it also gives you a level or a layer of insurance, because we've got parts of the vineyard that are in thinner, rockier soils that are quite exposed, and on a hotter year, that particular block may struggle a little bit. We also have parts of the vineyard that are a little bit more rich in soil, hold water a little bit better, and those will shine in those vintages, and vice versa. So yeah, in our 2018 here, we actually used 6 different blocks of Zinfandel from the same site. We have a couple blocks of Petite and a tiny bit of Syrah worked in there as well, to kind of flush out some of the broadness of the wine. And yeah, you really start to be able to plan that bottling even in the vineyard with your vineyard crew, having an estate vineyard.
That's fantastic. Now, again, we just got a few minutes left, so I'm going to kind of jump back and forth to all of you guys now, but let's begin, Ryan, with you. First of all, is the tasting room open right now? And can people come visit? Where can they get the wine? And what would you pair with that wonderful Zinfandel?
Okay, so we'll do that in order. So we are open now as of a day or two ago. We have an outdoor area. Bella's, if you've never been up here, has a beautiful tasting room. We've got olive trees outside, a beautiful picnic area for families to come and taste and enjoy. So that's been a blessing during all of this COVID madness. And so we are open now 7 days a week by appointment only. So call us here. Our wines are available on our website or by stopping in and tasting and picking up things here all the time. In terms of pairings, boy, this wine is so good just to sit by a fireplace. It looks like Aaron's up in maybe a snowy area. Nice fireplace. The best. Is a great pairing. But as far as food goes, it's a pretty versatile wine. It's not too ripe. It's not too lean. So I would probably pair a nice, maybe a nice pork dish, a little bit of risotto, maybe with this wine.
Fabulous, fabulous. All right, Miro, tell us, where can people get the 19, since you've already just released that wine, and what should we drink? What should we be eating with this lovely wine as we're drinking it?
I don't have a tasting room yet. The wines can be purchased on our website, miroscellars.com. What do I eat with this wine? Anything delicious will do.
That's the beauty of Zinfandel, right?
Variety of cheeses. Let's see. I like it with even with sausages. Something local made by Big John's in a good summer day or a cooler evening. Stew. I mean, right now I'm actually cooking something. Hopefully, I mean, you guys can't smell it, but it smells really good. So it's going to be a nice stew later, and the bottles are still open, so I'll do that.
That sounds great, because I think we are having pot roast for dinner, so looking
Nice.
forward to a nice Zinfandel after all of this. Yeah. All right, Katie, how about that lovely Russian River?
Yes, if you are interested in tasting this, you can visit the virtual booth, which would be great to tell you a little bit more about some other Zinfandels we have as well, or visit www.stfranciswinery.com. We're open, we're ready for you, and we're taking reservations. And I think as a pairing, you know, we're a firm believer in everything barbecue pairs well with Zinfandel. So open up the barbecue, put some great piece of protein or even some vegetables on there, and pop open a bottle.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Just absolutely wonderful. All right, Aaron, you get the last word. We started and I was circling back with you. So yeah, tell us a little bit more about where we can find the wine and what should we be eating with it?
So you can find Bear Flag Wines at bearflagwines.com. You can also find us at most fine wine retailers, major retailers. We have pretty good distribution. Just like Miro, hopefully someday we'll have a tasting room, but as of right now, we do not. So yeah, you can come visit me and I'll show you around the barrel cellar, but we don't have a tasting room or a place to actually come and taste. So we're retail at the moment. And other than that, my menu is about as broad as Miro's. So I honestly think that's one of the beautiful things about Zin. It goes with darn near everything. And yeah, so there's not a food that I haven't met that doesn't like being consumed with Zinfandel.
I totally agree. I actually, one of my, I'm the most weird pairing that I have, but I absolutely love it, is Zinfandel and sushi combination. Not necessarily the sashimi of, like, you know, very delicate, but, you know, some of those great sauces is a terrific pairing with the Zinfandel, and it's a real favorite in our household. So I'm so excited, you guys. You know, you've got me. You know, I can't wait to dive in more and visit you all at the booth. And it's been a real honor to be able to co-host this with Sam. Sam, are you ready to get in the last word?
Absolutely. I just want to throw out quiche Lorraine, guys. That's my favorite pairing. I did it last night, and I actually had a little bit of every one of the Zins you just talked about. So
nice.
So thank you. This was a great session. It's expanded our knowledge of Sonoma County, and thank you, Aaron, for the clarification on the sub AVA. I left one out at the beginning, so Sonoma Valley as well. Thank you, guys. We'll see you back in your virtual booths, and then for everybody watching, please make sure to visit the virtual booths. You can hear more stories, chat one-on-one with these amazing winemakers, and learn more about America's grape, Zinfandel. And the other thing too is that they'll all be hanging around after the live stream is over. So the booths will be open for a good little while once the broadcast is done. So thank you again, guys. And for anybody watching, you can see the schedule of all these upcoming Meet the Maker sessions we're doing in the live stream at the top of the virtual festival homepage. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Great job, Sam. Thank
Cheers.
you.
Excellent.
Cheers,
Thank you, Sam.
everybody.
Thank y'all. Cheers.
Thanks for having us. Cheers.
Hello again, everybody. I'm back, but just for a minute. This time I have the great privilege of introducing our next session. And while it is going to be about Contra Costa, it's also going to be about so much more than just Contra Costa. We have three great winemakers here to talk about different appellations. One is Rockpile, one is Contra Costa, and one is Sonoma Valley. So we're going to be taking a deep dive into these appellations. And I am really excited to introduce our moderator, Mark Vernon, who is CEO of Ridge Vineyards. And Mark was very kind to step in and corral his fellow board members to have a session. And I think you're in for a real treat on this one. So take it away, Mark.
Great. Thank you, Becky. Actually, it's a real privilege and honor to be able to moderate this illustrious panel we have today. It's really incredible. The three winemakers that make up this panel, I'll say each have well beyond 30 years of winemaking and industry experience. So Joel, if you can admit how many total years if you want, and Randall and Matt, but I thought I'd at least start by saying over 30. And all of whom have done an enormous amount to advance the cause of great Zinfandel. So today's panel is going to focus on comparing and contrasting wines that are coming from three different AVA or American viticultural areas. And as Becky mentioned, we're going to look at Rockpile, we're going to look at Sonoma Valley, and we're going to look at Contra Costa, three different kinds of places to grow Zinfandel, and talk about what makes each of those unique and special. So I think one of the things that's interesting is that each of these AVAs is capable of producing some really excellent fruit and therefore fantastic wines. And we're lucky at Ridge, we actually make some wine from each one of these three different AVAs also. So it's always fun to taste wines made by fellow winemakers who are really doing a top job with the grapes, and see just how good these wines can be. So I think with that, we're going to go ahead and get started, and let's first talk a little bit with Matt Klein about Contra Costa County. And what I should mention too, before I turn it over to Matt, is that I am reading the chat. So if any of you out there have questions, go ahead and put them on the chat, and I'll see if I can weave those into our conversation. But Matt, why don't you start off and tell us a little bit more about Contra Costa and the wine you brought today.
Okay, Contra Costa, I've been working with and pretty much focused on Contra Costa for over 35 years. But Contra Costa is a kind of big Bay Area county, and specifically the legendary vineyards that we work with and you have worked with and Joel is working with, and of course, all of us really enjoy these vineyards. But it's a very small area of Contra Costa. It's technically the northeast corner. And that corner is bordered by the Sassoon Strait, which is a bay that pierces the Coast Range and where the Sacramento and San Joaquin rivers meet. It's by car, it's only 50 miles from San Francisco, or 50 minutes, excuse me. And some of the unique features that affect the growing area is that it's in a rain shadow of Mount Diablo. Mount Diablo is an over 3,800 foot peak in the Bay Area, highest peak. And it casts this shadow that creates a lower rainfall in what is already makes it a dry, very dry region compared to, say, Sonoma Valley and points south. But what's really unique about this area is the dirt. And the dirt is called Delhi Sandy Loam. And Delhi sandy loam is a deep soil. In parts of our vineyards and others, it's over 40 feet deep. And it basically, if you could imagine beach sand, that is the texture of Delhi sandy loam. So it's got this very unique dry soil, a low pH, excessively draining soil, which, as you can imagine, for Vitis vinifera, wine grapes, it's perfect because of its low vigor. And grapevines are typically very vigorous. But there's a climatic event that happens every day during the growing season, and that is the wind picks up. Being that these vineyards are around the head of the San Francisco Bay, the coldest air that flows into the Central Valley goes right over these vineyards. In fact, it's so fierce that it helped form these soils. And so, between that and the fact that grapevines tend to, and plants in general, tend to shut down during a wind event because of dehydration, desiccation, these vines, mature their crop very smoothly, slowly. We typically are picking Zinfandel first, and it's typically mid to late August. The other interesting thing about this area is its history. These grapevines were planted mostly in the 1880s and 1890s. When my brother and I started making wine out there at Klein, we started in the mid 80s. And so, there was this great source of vines. The wine I chose to emphasize in this is our live oak Zin. It's actually a bottling of two blocks. One is our Mazzoni block, and another is the live oak Del Barba block, which is really close proximity and is only separated by Live Oak Road. The interesting things about these old vines in Contra Costa, our Zinfandel vineyards looked like they are originally planted as single varietals, but some of them over time have a kind of what I call rogue vine additions. And these examples are not exclusive to Contra Costa. You see them in Dry Creek and other places, but it kind of adds a unique factor. Our live oak Zin, the Mazzoni portion gives the most of the other than Zinfandel. Typically, our live oak is somewhere between 77 and 82% Zin. And then the balance is predominantly Carignan and Mataro. We have some cool vines of Muscat of Alexandria that are in our section. But it's interesting, the Del Barba live oak section is pretty much exclusively Zinfandel. So when we blend the two, we are always, have that mix.
So Matt, tell us a little bit about the characteristics that you see in the wine that are coming from this unique location you have there, and these vineyards occupy Contra Costa along that narrow strip of area. So tell us what you see are maybe some of the typical characteristics for this wine.
Well, let me get a refresher. But, the Zin is just beautiful, beautiful dark fruits of raspberry all the way to blackberries. But what's unique about these wines is it's their acidity level. Because the vines are moderated by this bay influence, we get a lot of acidity. Typically, our finished wines are 0.65 to 0.7, which that gives you that mouth-watering sensation and keeps the wine fresh and alive. pH, of course, helps with color and just, is a great preservative for the wine. Not much attacks these wines with that low pH. But, the sandy soils, to me, have a unique flavor profile. And besides all this fresh red and dark fruits, there's this dusty earth element. I call it dusty berry. I mean, if you've ever picked fresh blackberries on a hot summer day and popped them in your mouth, there's that dusty earth element. And it really shows in all the wines that are grown, all the old vines that are grown in the sandy soil.
Wow, that's a really good description. And I think it's one of those things that really makes the wines interesting. So now I think we're going to move on and compare and contrast a little bit. And Joel, maybe you can now talk to us about the Sonoma Valley and what makes it so special and so unique, and contrast a little bit to the other regions as well. And Joel, I think you're muted, so we can get you to unmute there.
Unmute my audio. Okay. Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
So thank you, Mark. I've been doing this winemaking thing for almost 50 years, which seems like a long time, except when you compare it with the history of Sonoma Valley. Sonoma Valley has been a grape growing region for a very long time in California, really starting in the 1850s. And it was really one of the first places where Zinfandel became the dominant and most important grape. Zinfandel first arrived in Napa in like 1851 or 1852, and then quickly came over to Sonoma, where it became the child, if you will, of Agustin Haresti, who was very important in sort of helping to establish the Northern California wine business. He actually wrote one of the early books on winemaking. But Zinfandel was one of his key varieties, and it permeated really the Sonoma Valley. So some of the oldest vineyards in Sonoma, the county of Sonoma, are found in Sonoma Valley. And some of the really interesting soils for growing vines are also found in Sonoma Valley. Sonoma Valley parallels Napa Valley, except it's farther to the west, it's closer to the ocean. So it really has more marine influence than Napa Valley has, and it stays a little cooler, a little longer in many mornings, which accounts for some of the freshness and the good acidity in Sonoma Valley wines. Some of the most famous Zinfandel vineyards are in Sonoma Valley. Probably if I was to sit down and start doing a first growth list of wines, I'd start out with something like Monterosso, and then I'd do Bedrock, which used to be called the Madrone Vineyard, and Old Hill Ranch and Pagani, and then I'd move up to Lytton Springs, of course. But there are some really great old Zinfandel vineyards in Sonoma Valley. Take, for instance, the one we're having today, which is my 2018 Bedrock, which is really one of the great vineyards in Sonoma Valley. It was a vineyard that was originally planted probably to mission grapes in the early 1850s by General Hooker. Mark, I know you guys make a wine from our vineyard, and you call it Hooker Creek as opposed to Bedrock, because Hooker Creek runs right through the vineyard. But that was in honor of General Hooker, who was a Civil War general, and this was when he was in California after the war with Mexico. And the vineyard went through several hands, but ultimately it ended up in the hands of George Hurst, who was William Randolph Hearst's father. And he planted much of the Zinfandel, which is found in bedrock in around 1888 or so. It's planted on an alluvial fan known as the Agua Caliente bench. So the soil in the vineyard really has been washed out of off the slopes of Monte Rosso. So it's this very cobbly, reddish soil, mostly Tuscan and Red Hill series soils that are perfect for growing dry farm vines. And, this vineyard is farmed, pretty much without water and has been for its entire lifetime. It's also been considered a really high quality place for growing grapes. We've been doing a lot of historical reading on this, and one of the people who was advising Hearst was a professor at UC, and he was asked if there was any place in California, this was in like 1890, if there was any place in California that would grow grapes as great as the great clarets of Europe. And he said, why, yes, of course, Senator Hearst's vineyard on the Agua Caliente bench in Sonoma Valley. So it must have been good, right? You wonder how much Hearst was giving him as a support stipend. But the grapes have been really marvelous. We split the vineyard up between people who know how to make Zinfandel really well, obviously Ridge and Tegan at Turley, and Bob Bialy, and a few others. Morgan, my son, of course, gets a portion of them for Bedrock Wine Company. But my little operation takes grapes from the blocks. These blocks are quite mixed up. There are 26 different varieties that are grown in here. It's really a throwback vineyard to a time when California was unclear about what it wanted to plant. So it tried lots of things. And when Hearst replanted, he replanted many of the grapevines that were in the original vineyard. For instance, there's a grape variety called Castet in this vineyard. Castet is like a grape variety from Bordeaux. There may be 2 hectares of it planted in Bordeaux someplace these days, but it was a dominant grape variety in Bordeaux for a while. So you can see California was trying things. So this goes back to that. My blocks are at least 75% Zinfandel. Morgan makes a heritage wine from this vineyard, which is not varietally Zinfandel, but my wine is varietally Zinfandel. And this area, because of the soil, because of the cool air that comes in over the Petaluma Gap and the Bennett Valley Gap in the evening, produces wines that have a very distinctive sort of baking spice, kind of vibrant character about them, and a very distinctive structure. They tend to be a little bit more rigid and structured than a lot of Sonoma County wines, and they have a freshness and a brightness that some of the other areas of Sonoma County do not have. So very, very unique, very special vineyard, and the whole Sonoma Valley, in fact, because you just look at some of the other vineyards there, they're all special, is a great place to be growing grapes, and a wonderful place to grow Zinfandel. Obviously, whether it was by accident or on purpose, they got it right when they first started planting Zinfandel in Sonoma Valley.
Excellent. Thank you, Joel, for that great explanation of both what makes Sonoma Valley special, as well as the unique Bedrock Vineyard, which truly is a real treasure and a legendary vineyard for sure, and one that we're happy to be able to get a little bit of fruit from as well and make a beautiful wine. So just to go back for a second and make sure everyone knows, Matt Klein, who spoke first, is the longtime winemaker and proprietary of the 3 Wine Company. Joel was really founder, winemaker, Ravenswood, and then has more recently been focused on his new, smaller company called Once and Future. And then next, we're going to have Randall Johnson, who also had spent a long time with Hess and Artisan, but as well, sort of like Joel is now recently, well, never retired, but maybe entering a new phase of life and concentrating again on a beautiful, small production-oriented company called Calafia. And so, Randall, why don't you tell us about Rockpile and what you've been doing there, and a little bit about the wine and what's unique about it.
Okay, well, thanks, Mark. Rockpile is I thought, and when I first started doing some research for this presentation, that Rockpile is relatively new, but it's not actually. It was established February 28th, 2002. So it's 19 years old, and next year, when we're sitting all together, it'll be exactly 20 years old. So it's a mountain-esque appellation. It's a huge appellation, a little bit like my former Mount Veeder. There's 16,000 acres in the Rockpile appellation, but there's only 160 planted. Currently, there's about 13 or 14 brands that produce a Rockpile appellated wine, and there's three main varieties out there: Zin, Petite, Syrah, and Cabernet. It is at 1,250 feet in elevation, so it's up there. And it's interesting because I've been working very closely with one of the pioneers in the Rockpile appellation, Jack Florence. And they've been up there for 2 generations. Jack Sr. was a winemaker and cellar master at Italian Swiss Colony, believe it or not, and actually wrote a book on Italian Swiss Colony. And his home ranch was in the Rockpile appellation before it was known as Rockpile. And then his son, Jack Jr., is managing the family ranch, and he manages other properties in the appellation, including the Thomas Vineyard. And I've been working with both Jack's fruit and the Thomas fruit. And Jack was telling me the other day that at the end of the Rockpile Road, you can actually see the ocean. It's 15 miles away. You can see a little bit of blue. But the ensuing ridges between the ocean and Rockpile keep the fog back, but it allows cool afternoon air. So it's been my experience in Rockpile that the wines are structured. There's tannin here. And the fruit profile is usually what I would call a black fruit profile as opposed to red. The soils are very thin, they're shaly, they're gravelly, you're literally on the top of a ridge. And the ridge runs east-west. So you have some vineyards that are exposed to the south, and you have some vineyards that are exposed to the north. And on the north side, at the bottom of the canyon, is Lake Sonoma. So you get a little bit of water. I don't want to call it marine, but you get a little bit more moist air on the north side. I prefer actually the southerly side where it's warmer, because I feel that Zinfandel is a warm, heat-needing variety. So anyway, I've been working with many Zinfandel appellations over the years: Napa, Sonoma, Amador County. I never worked really with Paso Robles Zin, but in Dry Creek, I've spent quite a bit of time in Dry Creek. And I got onto Rockpile here 4 or 5 years ago and started working with the Florences. And I have a new release that's going to be coming out this summer. Right now, all I've got is a barrel sample. So from the Thomas Vineyard. So I drank most of it before we came on air today. So it's like way down there. I'm enjoying that for lunch. So you can go to our website, Calafia Cellars, and check out some stats on this Rockpile Zin. So
Awesome.
That's about it.
Yeah, thank you, Randall. I think we're just about at the end of our time. I'm going to wrap up. Rockpile is a little bit younger of an area than the other two, but also already establishing itself as a spot for top Zinfandel, and will clearly fall into the category of legendary vineyards. I'll sort of wrap it up by saying all three of these regions that we talked about today are maybe a little bit related in the sense that they get a little bit cooler air and they're not quite as warm as other places. So I think that's the theme that brought this all together. I think with that, we're going to wrap it up and say thank you to the panelists, and thank you for sharing your time with us today here at ZinEX. So Becky, back to you.
Thank you, Mark. It's Sam. Thank you so much. What a great session. And thank you very much to Matt, Joel, and Randall. Super
Good job, you guys.
To hear these comparisons and some of the history of these locations and the AVAs. So everybody, we are going to go to break. We'll be back very shortly. Make sure to visit the virtual booths on the festival homepage and hear about the stories and all kinds of additional great information, great offers from the winemakers and wineries. And we will be right back.
We were established when your great-grandparents worked the land. We were there when your grandfather bought his first house. And again, when your mother started her business. At Exchange Bank, we continue to evolve with you by investing in technology and the communities in which you live, so that you and all generations to come are well invested for the future. Exchange Bank, invested to empower future generations.
Well, hello, everyone. It's me again, Becky Robinson from Zap, back with a really, really special Meet the Maker session. I am so excited to ring in this next session. Barbara Hames is going to be moderating, and I've known Barbara now. I've had the real privilege of knowing and working with her for almost 15 years, I think. She has been the wine instructor and management instructor for City College of San Francisco, and Zap had the great privilege of partnering with them for many years, and we hope to do so in the future as well. Barbara has a really great background in wine, and we thought of this special session. As you know, our theme this today and throughout ZinEX has been legendary Zinfandel vineyards, but we also wanted to give this a special twist with having these absolutely super talented women winemakers come together and talk about their experiences with Zinfandel. So Barbara, I'm so thrilled to turn it over to you. Take it away.
Great. Thank you, Becky. I'm really happy to be here. I'm happy to be here with Zap at this event, and I'm really happy to be here with this wonderful group of women. We've got really, their wines are amazing, interesting, and what I'd like to do is just dive quickly into what they do and how they do that, give that magic to the wine. Is Pam, is she on yet? Having a little, nope. Okay, so we're gonna jump to Julie Johnson, who I think needs no introduction to anybody who knows anything about Zap. Julie Johnson of Tres Sabores, and she has a terrific wine that she's gonna talk about, her perspective, Rutherford Zin.
Yeah. Happy to. Hi, everybody. Hi, Shauna. Hi, Susie. Hi. So nice to see you. I'm so looking forward to drinking your wines today as well. We sent each other wines so that we could all talk about everything together. But it was my secret, my secret grab. Like, one of the best things that happens annually at the Zinfandel Festival is that at the end or even during, you go around and you trade wine with a lot of people who you really love their wines. And I was really missing that this year. So this is really great. We did a little tradesies behind the scenes. And I want to remind you that we would love for all of you to be in touch with us. And thank you. And to let us know if we can get you some wine so you can duplicate this tasting again in your own living room. I make a Zinfandel that this year is 50 years in the ground, which is a little different for Napa these days, home to Cabernet. I have a little Cabernet on my property. I have a little Petit Verdot and a little Petit Syrah. But this Zinfandel, my kids have always said, Mom, own up to it. You are a Zinfandel estate in the heart of Cab Country in Rutherford, and be proud.
Woohoo!
So I am today, to say I am proud to be a Zinfandel maker in Napa. I have just 8 acres of Zinfandel. I'm a very tiny little place, but it has been my home since 1987, and it was the first organically certified grown vineyard in the area, just following in the stead of lots of people who have had those practices. The other thing about this Zinfandel that you should know that's pretty significant is that it's dry farmed. It's been, in fact, dry farmed for well over 30 years now. So those are things that terroir, Tres Sabores is about 3 tastes in every wine: the vine, the terroir, the good company around the glass, right? So if you're cooking, you're going to drink a lot of wine because the first glass always goes to the chef. But from the very beginning, I've looked at these 8 acres of Zinfandel as having an intense personality that's only amplified by the fact that the roots reach deeply and broadly, and that they really do have their own character. I picked this 8 acres. I picked them once through the entire vineyard for rosé, an early pick, true rosé. And then I go back again 3, 4, 5 weeks later and start picking from the bottom of the slope up, catching the different micro terroirs as they become ripe to craft this. This is about 50% wild yeast fermentation. 2018, Susie and Shauna, tell me if I'm wrong, but 2018 is just a stunner of a vintage. And it's been fun.
I love it. I love the 18s.
Yeah, it's just been wonderful. So I use only about 30% new oak on this and a decent amount of wild ferment and no crushing. This is all hand macerated. So anyway, that's a little summary of my wine, but the whole idea is in the tasting and just responding. I first figured out that I knew about tasting fruit for ripeness when I realized in my background, I used to go from Palo Alto to Watsonville and do you pick berries, lolly berries all the time. And that approximates the experience. Some are a little ripe for Zinfandel, some are not ripe enough, but there are a whole lot with gusto in between. So enjoy.
Thank you. That's such a genius move, picking it for rosé and then coming back and letting the fruit get all concentrated and awesome and picking it for Zin. Cheers, it's delicious.
Delicious.
You know the craziness about that, Shauna, is that people always say, well, you can't really do a green harvest and have it make any difference if it's in August. Well, I don't know. Zinfandel loves getting balanced, and the whole idea is getting it there however you can. And I do know that rosé pre-pick essentially really helps. So thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, well,
I love this wine, Lilly, and I think your description of going and picking all olive berries is perfect. It's just perfect, and it's so well balanced. So thank you.
Well, I agree, and I was going to say, I think the fact that you give it another 5 or 6 weeks after you do your rosé harvest probably can hush the naysayers, right? Because if it's 2 or 3 weeks, yeah, I get it, it's debatable, but delicious.
Thank you.
And you probably get more even ripening too.
Hey, Mitch.
You definitely will. For the most part, I take off the shoulders, and
how's it going? Can you hear me? Try to unmute yourself.
And as you
there you go.
As you know,
there we go. Hi, how you doing?
There she went. As an interloper in our conference call, as you know, Zinfandel does ripen unreasonably unevenly. And so picking off the shoulders, and you know, with old fruit too, what are you going to get? You're going to get viruses and other things expressing every year. And so sometimes I'll take fruit off of an entire vine just because it's not ready to play catch up under any circumstances. But usually I'm taking off those shoulders. That's the other thing that really helps. It really helps take away some of the danger, not all, but some of the danger of late, botrytis, of mold and stuff too.
Great.
Oh, shut up. I'd like to hear from you.
Great. Okay. So next we're going to hear from Shauna Rosenblum of Rockpile Cellars, and she's going to talk about this really interesting wine. Tell us the story of this vineyard, please, Shauna.
Sure. Hello, what a pleasure to be here with all of you guys. I love such a rock star panel, literally. So this is the Maggie's 2018. So again, corroborating sort of Julie's love of the 2018 vintage. So Maggie's Vineyard is located in Lower Sonoma Valley. So really kind of just over by the raceway. So super cool nights. And this vineyard was planted in the late 1800s, so 1890-ish. And it's a true old school field blend. And so there's this whole section with these gnarly old Semillon and Palomino and Muscadel vines. And they ripen a little bit faster than the rest of the Zin. And so the philosophy throughout the years has sometimes been to harvest it later and actually isolate it and make a late harvest white wine. But I thought that adding the white grapes as a co-fermentation was going to just really sort of lift the aromatics and bring something sort of fun and punchy and literally, as Julie put it on her back label, kind of up tempo. That was sort of what I was thinking too. And so this is about 5% white fruit, and it's co-fermented, everybody into the tank. It was sort of like layer cake, just Zin, a little bit of white fruit. My assistant winemaker was freaking out while I was pouring the grapes into the hopper. He's like, there's white fruit in there, right? I'm like, yes. He's like, no, like a lot. I'm like, it's okay. It's going to be okay. But I think the influence of the white fruit with the Zin just gives it almost this kind of stone fruit aroma up front, which I think plays really well with the sort of high-toned red fruit, little raspberry, strawberry, but that kind of like peach apricot just gives it layers. And that's, again, because of the white fruit. And this was a vineyard that my dad actually leased in early 2018. And so we'd been farming this vineyard all year. And my dad passed away September 5th, 2018. It was about 5 or 6 weeks before this vineyard was ready to harvest. So this was definitely something, I say in the tech note even, like I pour my heart and soul into all of my wines, but this wine saw a very sort of like raw and intense version of my heart and soul. And I'm really glad that it's captured in this bottling. And I love this wine. So I'm really honored to share it with you all.
I love it too. I think those aromatics from the white grapes are just, they're really terrific. And the great acidity, 100-year-old vines, right?
100-year-old vines, yeah. And sections of the vineyard wanted to get riper because it's Zin. Sections of the vineyard wanted to get riper. So it was a lot of like, all right, pick this 21 and a half and this 27 and let's even this out a little bit. But, getting all that bright acidity, I think, again, from the white grapes sort of makes the wine for me. It just kind of brings it all together.
It's such a lifted quality. It's really terrific.
Thank you.
It's very elegant.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Susie. How are you?
Good. Thank you.
Good.
How do you treat this because you really have kept so much fresh fruit aromatic? How much wood are you giving this, Shauna?
So it's exactly the same, 30% new, and it's about 20% French, 10% American. This was all tank fermentation, so stainless steel with 2 pump overs per day. I usually press off when it approaches dry. So when there's a little bit of residual sugar left, I'll press off. I don't want VA or anything to get out of control. So just sort of my way of making sure all of the fruit makes it to the final product. And then, down to about 30% new. And then this only spent 9 months in oak. which is sort of typical for my Zins, about 9 months, and then we bottled it.
Great. It's really great. Thank you. Susie. Well, let's hear from Susie now. So Susie Selby, so like Shauna, worked with her father. So it's something you have in common. And she's got her Bobcat Zinfandel 2018 for us. And take it away, Susie.
I will start by saying that Shauna's dad was one of my favorite people in history. I absolutely loved him, and he's so proud of you right now, Shauna. You're doing a fabulous job of carrying on his legacy. So,
thank you. And that means a lot to me. Thank you.
Well, he was really a mentor in the industry. This Bobcat is a very, very jammy style. I make 3 different single vineyard Zins, but this one is definitely intense and jammy, and it has a long maceration of about 6 weeks. It's from a vineyard that is sort of in the Lake Sonoma area, but it's partially in Alexander Valley and partially in Dry Creek Valley. So it's sort of a different area. It's still quite hot there, and so ripening is not of concern, but it also has much smaller berries than a lot of Zin vineyards that I've worked with. And it's 16.5 alcohol. And as you can imagine, the hardest part about making Zin is fermenting Zin, especially when you get to alcohols that are this high. And, I like consumers to know that, a lot of wines are made in the vineyard, a lot are made in the cellar, but this Zinfandel is just made during fermentation. It takes a lot of work, a lot of nutrients, the late nights, the re-fermentations, but ultimately I think it's just a really spicy, jammy, rich Zin, and it's certainly one of my most popular of the Zins that I make.
Thank you.
And this is in only American oak, and it's only about 20% Dew. So it's mostly neutral barrels. And there's a little bit of petite straw, about 6%.
Right. It's very concentrated. That's certainly true. But for such a big wine, such a big jammy, that style, I think it's really delicious, and really the fruit comes through.
Well, thank
Anybody
you.
else have a quick note about their tasting before we go on to Pam?
Yeah, it's just beautiful strawberry, just intense, ripe strawberry flavor. And again, for the alcohol, like I wouldn't guess in a blind tasting this is 16.5. I would say, wow, that's an intense, beautiful wine, but it carries it very well. It's very balanced.
Thank you.
You must get put a lot of sunlight in the fruit, because I also, just like for your Shauna, I'm just getting a lot of, it's not only the strawberry, it's just a lot of floral characters. Zinfandel loves getting that exposure, and seems like you must spend a lot of time in the vineyard as well with this.
Okay. Well, a lot of we have to be careful about leaf pulling, as you know. I do make sure there's good sun exposure, but thank you. It's it's very much a balancing act with Zins, as all of you know.
This is going to open up all day and into my meal. I wish it wasn't 3 o'clock. I wish it was really 5 o'clock, and then we could just drink, right?
I think they say it's 5 o'clock somewhere, right?
All right, so we're gonna talk about To Pam's Doors now. An absolute maverick in Santa Clara, Santa Cruz Mountains fruit. So we're going back to 2017, and tell us about the Rusty Ridge wine that you have for us.
Sure. Thank you. Happy to have made it into the panel here with the technical glitches or going off my phone. Anyway, to give you a little background on this wine, it's one we've been making since, I believe the first year was like 94. The vineyards, we actually bring, it's a proprietary blend. It's a couple of vineyards that come together, but the base of it is always one of my old favorites called Lion Oaks, which I think is not dissimilar from a lot of the others. They're planted probably in the turn of the century, maybe a little later after 1890. It's kind of, the records have been lost, but it's like early 1900, 06 in that time frame. So they are definitely old vine. And like all old vine, they yield unevenly. They're really low yielding. They tend to raisin. They're dry farmed, head trained, of course. And then the thing I love about this vineyard, maybe more than anything, is it's hillside, but it's on the east side of Mount Madonna, which is much warmer than the Santa Cruz Mountain side, the western side. So you get the warmth, but then what I think is really what I've always enjoyed about this vineyard is that you get the cooling in the evening from the fog that kind of comes over the summit and drops down to the foothills on the other side. And even though you get the heat and you get the, the really nice fruit, the raspberry, the olala berry is what we always talk about, you get the cooling, which allows it to keep acid. So the 17 isn't one of the highest, acids, but even though it's got a relatively high pH, the TA is still quite high. So it tends to age out and be a little more elegant that way. But so it's a kind of a passion project. You don't get much from the vineyard, but it rewards.
What is your yield, Pam? What is the
on
yield
this?
for 100?
It is about anywhere from like a quarter, maybe, to a half ton an acre. You know what I mean? It's typical of this old vineyard. It's struggling. It's probably, we're hoping that they'll hold off turning it into housing, because it's like most places, right? It's so valuable now as the valley encroaches on that, ag land. But for now, it's safe. So we're excited.
What I love about this wine is the combination of the really good acidity, and then, but embedded in it, you can really tell the fruit is really ripe.
Yes. And that, that is,
so.
It's a struggle as so much as a winemaker, as we were all talking about. You get some, it's like 22, and then you get it, and overall it comes in and it's 24. And then day 2, it's 25 after it soaks up a little bit, and you're like, but that's old vine Zin, right?
Like, why is this 32 all of a sudden?
Exactly, right? You're like, we were trying so hard this year to maybe bring it down a tad, but it doesn't always work. But it always seems to make itself special anyway, right? Again, old vine Zin.
Such pretty cherry aromas, like black cherry, red cherry, really, really pretty.
Right, thank you. Yeah.
I also love all of the kind of sweet spices in this, that wonderful Carol Meredith wheel. I just want to spend all the time in the purple, which are all of the sweet spices and the cardamoms and the star anise. I get a lot of star anise. Even though it's not licorice per se, I get a lot of that wonderful rumbling, brambly kind of core there. It's right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was tasting the spice in this wine. I thought it was very, very interesting. It's herbal, but not herbal.
But not herbal, right. I hear you. Yeah.
It's changing a lot too in a short period of time.
Yeah, I opened everyone's wine about an hour ago, and it's been really exciting to kind of see how they're developing in the glass as the minutes tick by.
We only have a couple of minutes, but we have one question, which is, how do you keep a wine balanced when the alcohols are high? That's
I'd say
$64,000 question.
Yes.
You have to have jammy fruit in order for it. I think the fruit has to be very intense in order for the heat to not come through in the wine when the alcohols are high.
True.
Short
I
answer.
think when you have a high alcohol, everything needs to be in balance. It's relative, right? So if the alcohol is higher, the acid needs to be higher. You just need to play that balancing act a little bit if you can.
Right. Yeah. That's exactly, this has been my experience over the years, is that you're walking that balancing, because if you have enough fruit and other qualities going on, it kind of sets that acid back. It's not it shouldn't be the first thing that hits you. It might be there, but as an underlying component, but the other things should complement it and basically hide it.
But I love the way for all of your wines that you've really balanced out the oak. It just, I know, it's there, but it gives some weight and it gives some smoothness, I do think, to the finish. But, that's the thing with Zinfandel, right? You just don't want to hit it on the head with that oak when even when it's super ripe, I just think that can destroy it. We're not making, ladies, wannabe Cabernets here, right? We're doing some other things. And I think it clearly, I love this. Thank you so much. You're just really listening to your fruit. It's very cool. Very cool. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much and for sharing your wines with us. I hope that everybody will go to their booths and get really, really curious about these wines we've talked about and give them some support and help them with and buy some wine, buy some Zinfandel and enjoy really well-balanced, just really thoughtful wines by this terrific group of women. Thank you so much, everybody.
Oh, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Happy zapping.
Yes,
Happy zapping, everybody. Thank you, Barbara. And thank you so much to Julie, Shauna, Susie, and Pam. This was an education in a session. And Barbara, stay with us. We're going to go to break, but we're bringing you back in a few minutes for a fascinating panel on estate wines. So for those of you listening, we'll be right back. Make sure you check out the virtual booths, visit these winemakers in their booths, talk to them one-on-one. There's all kinds of great offers and opportunities to pick up wine, and we will be right back. Okay, everybody, we are back and just having a whale of a time at Virtual ZinEX. So many great wines, so many great winemakers and stories. The origin stories alone from this virtual festival have been incredible. And the Meet the Maker sessions have been incredibly insightful and informative. And I want to thank all the winemakers and thank the amazing people at Zap who put this together. It's been just a terrific 2 days. We are now coming into the final Meet the Maker session of the day. And I am going to bring back Barbara Hames, who just did our Women Owners panel. And she's going to host a panel with 4 amazing wineries, all featuring estate selections. So Barbara, over to you and looking forward.
Thank you, Sam. I'm really pleased to be here. We've got some amazing wines and winemakers to showcase for you. And we're just going to dive right in and start with a legendary estate and some legendary wine from Gergich Hills. And so to talk about the wine that you've selected, the 2017 Mike's Old Vine Zin, we've got Ivo Jeremaz, who is the winemaker. So take it away, Ivo.
Thank you, Barbara. Thanks for having us. We are a small family-owned and operated business in Napa Valley, a partnership of Gergich and Hills families since '77. As you said, 100% estate. We have about 350 acres in Napa Valley, all certified organic, which is what I'm very passionate about, how you grow grapes. This particular wine came from a famous vineyard in Calistoga that Mike, when he was working for Chateau Montelena, he was making Zin in the 70s. And when this property came on market in 1996, Mike snatched it. So it is, vineyard is over 100 years old, and we have only 2.8 acres. And if you can see behind me, that's a picture of one of those old vines. 2017 that we are pouring tonight, we call Miljenko, which is Mike's native Croatian name. It was very hot, as we remember, hot, forging fire, we like to say, because literally we had fires around, and there was lots of rainfall early, and it was very hot year. We had 6 heat events for over 110 degrees. What saved this vintage was that incredible amount of water in the soil, and the plant had the grapevines which stood heat pretty well. At Gergich Hills, we don't like high alcoholic, pruny, over-ripe zins. So zin is kind of a challenge to make elegant many years, especially this one. But we kind of, alcohol is barely 50%. And in our Zinfandel, we like to showcase more strawberries than prunes and jammy fruit. So this year was difficult due to heat, but I think we still made very elegant Zinfandel. It's richer than most of ours, has nice tannic structure, and goes well with like a lamb. I would suggest that. Also, most people don't even know that zin can also age gracefully. Zin has enough tannins to age. Look at Pinot Noir. Pinot Noir has much lower tannins than Cabernet, yet it can age for 50 or 100 years. So that would be a short story about Zinfandel. And before we part, or before I'm done with my speak, I want to say that Zinfandel is obviously the most important variety at Gergich Hills because of our Croatian heritage and my uncle's involvement with finding out that zin originally came from Croatia. So I would love to have some questions if there is any.
Thank you, Ivo. The wine is delicious. It's really interesting. The tannic structure is there. Even though you said there's a lot of heat, do you think that it was the soil, the water in the soil that really helped you? Is that something that speaks of that estate vineyard?
Yeah, it's the soil is reddish, so you're suggesting lots of iron there, and it's well drained. It's all on hills, lots of rocks. So very similar, like Dalmatia coast that I'm from. Climate is obviously a bit different. We have St. George rootstock, which we see that is still best rootstock for Zinfandel due to these viruses. But it grows really well early on, and then if there's no water, some people believe St. George rootstock is drought resistant. It's not. It has huge roots, but you still have to have water. And many times when you run out of water, there's a stress. But in 2017, due to an enormous amount of water, there was plenty of water in soil, and I think that saved vintage. Otherwise, for us, would be pruny, very overripe, jammy. We still have that freshness. Obviously, came through water and through good acidity in wine.
Yeah, and that freshness is really there. It's really clear. So thank you. That's great. Really, really delicious wine from a really, legendary estate. Next person we're going to talk to is Hugh Japal from Kivira. So we're moving from Napa to Sonoma. And Hugh, tell us a little bit about the estate, the Anderson Ranch. This is the Ranch Zin.
Well, pleasure to be here. It's an honor to follow Ivo at Grgich. I'm actually going to echo a lot of things Ivo said philosophically. We're also a small family winery established in the early 80s, Dry Creek Valley, a great spot for Zinfandel. Also, small, I think I mentioned family owned. And, we've been, committed to organic farming now for over 20 years. Currently, all of our estate vineyards, and we're over 80% estate, are CCOF certified organic. We also do utilize biodynamic practices in the mix, but our certification on all of our estate ranches is CCOF. And it's just a blessing to be, an estate winery. I love the idea of this panel and that, we're really talking about wine growing and not grape growing. Our Anderson Ranch is in a pretty special spot within Dry Creek Valley. It's right what I like to call in the Lytton Spring corridor. So on the western end of that is the Maple Vineyard and Mortson Winery. You go down Lytton Spring Road, and right before the little Healdsburg Municipal Airport, you have our Anderson Ranch. And it's a leased site. We have a long-term lease. We farm it with our own full-time crew. The vines were planted in '97. in the traditional style. So head trained, spur pruned. It's interesting what Ivo said with the iron in the soil. This is an unusual site that a lot of sites in Dry Creek also have high iron content, that more orange soil. This site is more of a decomposed sandstone. It's very lightly textured. It's almost like a little patch of Goldridge soil was transported into Dry Creek Valley. And like a lot of sandy soil wines that, from my experience, in one of the characters we try to capture in this wine is that soil character, which for us is a lot of bright fruit, more in the red fruit spectrum than dark fruit. Like a lot of sandy soil wines, it has exceptional acidity. And I've been winemaker here, for 11 vintages, and not in one of those vintages have I had to add a gram of tartaric acid in 11 vintages. And we're not picking at low sugars, we're picking 23.5 to 25 plus. And of course, that's never your true sugar with Zin. It's always what it soaks out at. But even with those sugars, our wines after malolactic have never needed any adjustment ever at all. Again, you go further past this site, our Anderson Ranch, you come to Ridge and the Lytton Spring properties, and then you keep going east and you run into Alexander Valley. So that Lytton Spring corridor is just really, it's really a perfect spot for Zinfandel. It can get hot, warm to hot, but one of the climactic factors in Dry Creek is a big diurnal swing in temperature. So, we can get 100, 110, but it often dramatically cools down at night. And that's a really big thing for us in preserving that freshness, from this estate piece. And for us, it's really, we like to think of it as our Grand Cru vineyard. We grow grapes, even having some older vines on our home estate on West Dry Creek Road, right next to Raffinelli. But for us, our Anderson Ranch truly, it really embodies our vision and approach to Zin. And we're really proud of the single vineyard bottling we do that, kind of what, like Ivo said, it's super challenging to make. Sometimes Zin doesn't want to be that elegant, super refined wine, but it can be in the right spot. And with a little thoughtfulness in the winemaking, you can have those jammy elements as part of the wine, but they don't have to dominate the wine. And the wine doesn't truly have to be so high in alcohol. And this site really does that style of Zin in a spectacular way.
It certainly does. You've really, if you don't mind me saying this, you've really tamed this wine really well, or these really ripe grapes, because you just, the fruit jumps out of the glass, the oak is there, everything's really well balanced, the acidity's there, and it's just a pleasure to drink. It's
Thank you.
Yeah, just great. Lovely, without being overly jammy. It's just really expressive, pure expression of fruit. And that's a lovely thing. So thanks you.
All right, I look forward to some questions. So.
Yeah, we've got a few. So next, we've got Miro Cholikov from Trenta Due, his day job, if you will. And he's going to talk about his L'Astoria 2018 Zin. And
Right, it's block 303, which is our best block at Trenta Due. So speaking of estates, Trenta Due started back in 1956 as a vineyard for about 10 years. And then Paul Draper was very instrumental of getting Leo to commit into winemaking. Not 1969, Trenta Due made their first wines under the Trenta Due label. So
uh-oh, we lost Miro. So we lost Miro. Oh, there he's back. Great. Having some technical issues? Are other people hearing Miro?
No.
He's having
No.
connection
Oh,
issues.
he's froze.
No.
So while he comes, while you try to get him back, we will talk. Hopefully we'll hear more about his really interesting wine. And I have to say, when I moved to California, first thing in 1976, the first wine I bought was from Trenta Dewey, really old, kind of talk about heritage vineyards. Anyway, so I think while we're trying to get Miro back, are you back, Miro? You got to unmute yourself. Nope, still have a problem.
Barbara, I think he's having a connection. Should probably move on to,
Yeah, it is a connection issue.
Okay, let's talk to Kevin. While we try to get Miro back, let's talk to Kevin Hall from Alexander Valley Vineyards about his Alexander School Reserve Old Vine Zin. This is also a 2017.
Yep. Thank you very much for having me. Can you hear me? Is everything okay?
Good.
All right, so I'm talking about our Old Vine Zin 2017 from Alexander Valley Vineyards. For those of you not familiar with those, we are a family-owned winery as well. I wouldn't say we're small, we're medium-sized. And we're mainly known for our Cabernet, but also we have a trio of Zinfandels, most famous of which would be Zin. But the wine I'm talking about today is our Old Vine Zin from 2017. And as Ivo talked, 2017 was one of those vintages where we had plentiful rainfall at the beginning of the year, which carried us through, but we did have quite a few heat spikes during the harvest season. And Zinfandel is one of those great varieties that can really take off. So this wine, this 2017 Old Vine Zin, it's a big wine. It was one of those where it's got a lot going on, a lot of complexity, a lot of great fruit. You'll get this lush cherry and cherry preserve. You'll also get this wonderful spice, black pepper, of course, and a little bit of white pepper. But that's always the great thing about Old Vine Zin is it comes in with all these secondary characteristics. You get the great fruit, you can get wonderful spice. You pick that up from the barrel aging, but it also can have these little nuances like graphite, and you definitely pick up the soil qualities from this site. Very special site. It was planted in 1965, just down the road from us. Really cool old vines, head prunes. Wonderful site. Gives us this great fruit expression every year. Hey, Meryl, you back?
Back. I love this.
I guess I can hear you guys.
Yeah. I love the pepper in the wine. Really, I love that this is, Kevin, I love that your wine is it's old school in the best sense of the word, and especially given the challenges you had in 2017. Okay.
It was definitely a challenging year. I mean, we were coming off drought, so we were very thankful for the rainfall that we got at the beginning of the year. But those heat spikes just kept coming. And Old Vine Zin, it doesn't produce much fruit at all. So when it's ready to go, you got to get in there and get it off the vine as quickly as you can, get it into the winery.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you. All right, let's try to go back to Miro. Can we, Miro? Are you there?
Good. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I'm here. I can hear you.
Okay. So do you want to finish
Okay.
about your wine?
All right. So, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, again, made wine. I've been there for about 20 vintages. Not a tricky vintage because it rained at the beginning of October. I don't know if you guys remember. Did you lose me again?
No, we got you now.
Oh my God. Okay. So Okay, so we had a little bit of rain in October, kind of freshened things up a little bit, and it stretched the vintage quite a bit. So there was no issue as far as rot and the usual consequences from rain. We had plenty of hang time, which was a good thing. Block is about 50 yards away from.
Oh dear, we're losing you again.
Bridge Geyserville. So we're on the same strata, pretty much.
We're losing you, Miro.
I'm sorry. Hey, there's nothing I can do. I don't know what's going on. It seems like the signal. Yeah.
The signal's not very strong.
I don't know what's going on here. It's been good all day long.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I think what I'm
So
going to
anyway, I can still hear you guys.
Good.
All right, move on.
Yeah, I think I've got a couple of questions. So from folks. So one of the questions is about ageability, which somebody talked about ageability related to alcohol. So really, that's a really key question with Zinfandel, obviously. Hugh, I see you shaking your head. So do you want to say something?
Yeah.
Well, I think.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Again, not to repeat everything Ivo said, but Zinfandel, made in a style that retains acidity, can age amazingly well. And I'm constantly blown away by old Zins. People pour blind for me from, Ridge or Ravenswood or wineries that have, that library to pull from. We've started to age more and more of our wines to do library releases and have been just shocked by how well Zinfandel in that, in the style we do just holds up to aging. So, I think acidity and tannin, I saw another question pop up about acidity and tannin. That's also key to the age worthiness. Alcohol is important, but acidity and tannin also play a key role in the age worthiness of Zinfandel.
Great, thanks. Anybody want to address the issue of alcohol, the high ageability and the high alcohol?
So I'll take that real quick. I would say that as long as the wine's in balance, then it'll age gracefully. If you have the acidity, you can have the alcohol, but you need to have the concentration of flavors and all that. If you have the balance, then it will age.
Right.
Great. Ivo, were you trying to say something?
Just my opinion about alcohol. Why don't we like high alcohol in any of our wines? And I'm not saying that that's bad. Many people love it. 17% alcohol in Zinfandel, but it obstructs precision. I always, when I try to explain it, I try to use visual descriptions. So you have a 300-pound lineman in football, and you have wide receivers. Lineman has to be huge, big, and body is necessarily pretty. And then you look at wide receiver, body is all chiseled. So that's how I compare a low alcohol wine and a high alcohol wine. Each one has purpose, but if you want precision, you want to kind of mimic, kind of stop with alcohol, maybe 14.5%. That's what we found out at Gergich.
Great, thank you. We need both of those, right? The football team needs both.
Yes, yes.
Right. Okay. Quickly, we have a last question about the difference between acidity and tannin. And let's talk about that in terms of, obviously in terms of Zinfandel and how the average, how people perceive those.
If nobody wants it, I can take the question, yeah.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. So acidity is part of our, what we can taste, like sweetness. and it's very important for freshness and longevity of any wine. The obviously tannins, phenolics are part of texture. You kind of feel them on your tongue, and they are very important too because that's a major. They provide major structure for especially red wine, because in white wine virtually you have no phenols. So, and then there's a fine balance about these components typically the higher the phenols, lower acidity should be to kind of balance it. That's why in white wine, which are low in phenols, you can have higher acidity. But once again, the main difference is acidity, lemon juice. That's what bites you, and then the phenols, bitter coffee. It's a sensual, like a textural sensation in your mouth. When you have too many tannins and they are green, kind of, almost like it feels like you are eating a green banana. Basically, these phenols remove our saliva from which is protein, from our mouth, and makes it really inside our mouth very rough. There's a perception. So it's perception, not taste.
Thank you. That's perfect. It's true. You don't taste tannins, you feel them. So I always think that sometimes tannins will also feel like if your cat, that nice sandpapery cat licks your tongue. That's what it's like. Anyway, we've run out of time, but I want to thank all our folks and thank to Miro, to Ivo, to Hugh, to Kevin, and they're still at their booths, I believe, and also they've got wonderful wines for you that they've selected packages that you can purchase from them. So I hope you'll go back to their booths and visit with them, and then think about buying something, supporting them, and these wonderful estate vineyards that they've been working with for a long time. We had 100+ years of experience with us today. So thank you very much. And back to you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you so much, Barbara. Another great session led by you, this one on estate Zinfandels. And thank you very much, Kevin, Ivo, Miro, and Hugh. Super interesting, and there was a lot of chatter in the live stream chat while you guys were on, and some really interesting questions and thoughts that people shared. So your discussion sparked a lot of interest. Thank you guys, and we will see you back in your booths. For everybody watching, we're heading into the home stretch. Do visit all the winemakers. You can have these one-on-one video chats with them in their virtual booths. It's very cool. Learn more about their wineries, learn about the special packages and offers that they have on letting you pick up wines during the festival and have them shipped straight to you. And we will be right back in a few minutes with final words from Rebecca. Thanks, guys.
Whether you're buying property, building, or making improvements, American Ag Credit is here to help with fixed rates, variable rates, long and short-term loans. Unique solutions tailored to your unique needs. Because Ag is our middle name.
Well, hello everyone. Last call for ZinEX. Rebecca Robinson back here with you, and I can't believe how the afternoon has flown by. What an amazing group of winemakers. I think I've said it before and I'll say it again. I continue to be so inspired by these folks and their talents for what they do. And the fun part is that we get to all experience it. I know I am definitely going to enjoy a Zinfandel tonight with the pot roast that we're going to be having. And I just wanted to say how appreciative and how grateful we are to all of you for showing up, for taking this plunge with us into the virtual world. As we know, ZAP has been around for a long time. We are most known for our Zinfandel Festival, which takes place every year in San Francisco. And of course, this year we could not be with you in person, but I hope that we brought a little Zinstancing joy to your lives today. And I would encourage you to do visit with the winemakers. I know we got cut off a little bit from Miro on the last session, but he's standing by ready to chat and tell his story with all of you. And again, ZAP is a member-based community, and we would absolutely love for you to get involved. Come find us. You can email us at info@zinfandel.org. We have a lot of other videos to share with you on our website. A lot of you have asked, how do we find these sessions today? And we will have them available on our Facebook page. We'll be sending out an email link as well. And my final thoughts today have to do with what's next for ZAP. We are really excited to launch a new program called Zinfandel Trail, and that's going to be coming at you. It's going to be an interactive online experience. It's a mapping system so that you can find those wineries and go visit them when it's available and you're able to get out and track them down. It'll be super fun. And so for the moment, we want to leave you with some closing thoughts on legendary vineyards and the Zinfandel Trail. So until then, I look forward to seeing you again when we can, and enjoy Zinfandel until then. Take care. Bye-bye for now.
An old adage goes, life is about the journey, not the destination. And wow, does California's legendary Zinfandel have a journey. Peppering the Golden State from wind-whipped mountains to fertile valleys. Crossing the calloused hands of a grape grower, listening to the unique perspective of a winemaker. It's a journey measured in miles and vintages. Above all, it's a path unique to every Zin lover. Your Zinfandel trail is waiting. Will you take it?